And a good Wednesday morning, Quad Cities. It is Wednesday, July 16th. I'm meteorologist Andrew Stutzke, and I want to welcome you into Ask Andrew Live. This is an exclusive here on the 8 Plus app and also on our social media channel too. It is a full half hour dedicated to answering your burning questions about anything weather related. And today, not only do we get to do that, but we're also going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into our severe weather prospects for late this morning into the early afternoon. So we have a lot to talk about. If this is your first time, welcome. Tell a friend. Again, we do this every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Even if I'm on vacation, we'll have a substitute like Morgan and Peter come in and take over the reins to answer some questions. And that they'll be doing a lot of next month as I take some well-deserved time off. So we're looking forward to that. If you've never done this before and you're curious, how do I get your question to me, or how do you get your question to me? This is how. So you send a text message to the wonderful folks at our digital desk. We've got Alec manning the stream there too. It's 309-304-0888, 309-304-0888. And once again, for the folks all the way in the back, 309-304-0888. Text, do not call. If you call, you're going to get our lovely receptionist, but you want to text that number instead. So that's how you get our questions. You can also put them in the Facebook chat too. We're monitoring that, but the text method is definitely easiest and most convenient. So we're going to talk about that prospect for severe weather today. We're also going to review the 2 questions that I answered for you this week. There was another round of some good ones. I am gearing up to do a deeper dive into the Texas flood situation from last week. Next week, this one requires a lot of research because I know a lot of you have questions about cloud seeding, how it works, what it's capable of, what it's not capable of. So I'm doing a lot of research on that right now, getting with some of the experts in that field to see what is, what isn't possible. And I'm going to do a deep dive into that next week. So I just want to make sure I get all my ducks in a row when it comes to covering that, because yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of us have is, what happened down in Texas with all that flooding, and why are we seeing so much flooding across the region, including right here in the Quad Cities? So we're going to talk more in depth about that next week, something I'm really looking forward to. A lot of information that I got to get through yet. Let's talk about the severe weather chances today, because we have gone ahead and issued a weather impact alert for late this morning into the early afternoon. It's going to be a very narrow window today when it comes to severe weather. And I want to, emphasize that this is not going to be a repeat of Friday. We're not going to be seeing flash flooding. We're not going to be seeing strong, damaging tornadoes like we did on Friday. This is a totally different setup compared to that. So here's the time we're going to be watching. And in fact, it's not far from now. It's from 11 o'clock this morning until 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we're probably going to be able to tighten up that timing even more once we get a little bit closer. But the threats today do include strong wind gusts that could approach 60 miles an hour, and also an isolated tornado or two. So make sure you have your Storm Track 8 app, great resource to get warnings. It's always the first app that pops up on my phone when it comes to warnings. And also do what you're doing now. You're watching our severe storm discussion right here on Ask Andrew Live, and I'm sure there will probably be more coverage as warranted as we go into early this afternoon right here on the app as storms begin firing off. So here's the zones for today. It is a noticeable shift east from yesterday. I wasn't honestly that surprised to see this. I was kind of highlighting yesterday morning that I thought it was our Illinois hometowns that had that better chance at seeing stronger storms today. And the Storm Prediction Center really agrees with that, putting the 2 out of 5 risk for areas east of Dubuque, Maquoketa, down through Clinton, Geneseo, Kewanee, Princeton. So if you're in our Illinois hometowns, excluding Galesburg, Monmouth, Macomb, and Knoxville, I think you've got the better chance of seeing those strong to severe storms as we head into this afternoon. Let's break down those individual zones here so you can see that. And in fact, this is a little bit of an upgrade. This is as of 8 o'clock this morning, the tornado zone. Now, when we looked at this earlier this morning during GMQC, we did not have a 2 out of 5 risk. But now we do have a 2 out of 5 risk for tornadoes. This is the tornado zone, and that is for our northeastern hometowns. So that includes Sterling Rock Falls, Erie Prophetstown, Chadwick, Milledgeville, Kalita, right through Savannah. Galena is included in this, Elizabeth, Stockton. So that's where we could see a little bit more potent spin in terms of getting one of those isolated tornadoes to develop. The rest of us are at a 1 out of 5. So this is just breaking here new this morning in the last couple of hours, or I should say the last hour, and that we've seen that upgrade in the tornado threat now to a level 2 out of 5 for areas northeast of the Quad Cities. Let's see if anything changed in terms of the wind zone. Nope, that is still the same. That is still a 2 out of 5 for that same area north and east of the Quad Cities, where we're seeing that better potential of some 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So that means when you look at all the threats combined here, discounting northeast of the Quad Cities, wind is going to be our biggest threat today. You can see that's a 2 out of 5. If you're northeast of the Quad Cities, though, we can actually move that 2 out of 5 on tornadoes. We can move that tornado threat up a little bit higher there. 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. What about hail today? Not really too excited about that because the atmosphere is already filled with heat. It's going to be a very warm day. Here's our threat tracker, by the way, and you can see how this severe weather threat is going to evolve as we go through time. So by noon, we start kind of ramping things up a little bit. As we get to 1 o'clock, we're ramping it up even more, and it'll stay that way up until about 4 o'clock, and then we'll see that severe threat decrease very quickly as we go into this evening. So again, we're talking about a small window here today, not a huge window, and I want to emphasize again, this is not going to be a repeat of what we saw on Friday. Let me bring up those points too, by the way. What's going to make this different versus what we saw here on Friday? Here are the key things to keep in mind. In terms of storm coverage, these are going to be scattered. So we're not going to be seeing widespread storm activity today. It's not going to be coming in a solid line all the way from north to south. These will be broken apart and scattered in nature. Also, the storm motions today are going to be much quicker than what we saw on Friday. On Friday, our storms were moving between 30 and 35 miles an hour. Today, storms will be moving between 40 and 50 miles an hour, much quicker. So they're not going to be sitting in one spot all too long. And we're also not going to see multiple rounds of storms today. This will be a one and done event. Once it moves to the east, that is it. We're not going to see any further severe storms or heavy rain producing storms for the remainder of today into tonight. So that should hopefully put your mind at ease in terms of the setup that we have going today. Let's put future track into motion. And again, we're in the 9 o'clock hour. So that means probably in about the next 10 minutes, we're going to get a brand new run of our future track model. So I'll go back to this as we get a little bit closer to the 9:20 time frame, because that's when we should get the latest data. But this morning, still suggesting that once we get to about 10:30, 11 o'clock, we'll start to see some of those showers and storms to the west start bubbling up, and then they'll move eastward with time. And eventually, one or two of those could briefly become strong to severe. You're seeing that down to the south of Interstate 80. Now, that could also take place north of Interstate 80. Our particular model is trying to develop this south. That's certainly a possibility, but keep in mind there could also be a few storms north of this, north of the Interstate 80 corridor. Those would be the ones getting into Sterling Rock Falls, Clinton, and Savannah, where we have to watch for a quick spin-up tornado. But like we saw yesterday, we're still seeing kind of these little Boeing signatures in the model data, which is telling me the wind threat is there. Those are the stronger wind gusts of up to 60 miles an hour. So there's 3:30 going into 4. And once we get after 4 to 5 o'clock, the storm threat is gone. It disappears. So again, very narrow window of opportunity here to see some of those stronger storms. I want to actually go to the satellite picture, and we're going to let this load up here because I want to show you some of the features that we're going to be watching. So I'm going to zoom this out a little bit further, and I'm going to save this to get our bearings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple of features on the map here. This is what we're going to be paying attention to. So the actual low pressure itself is spinning right here, kind of near Fort Dodge. There's our low. What we're going to be tracking is there is a little bit of lift ahead of that, and we call that a trough or a disturbance. And I'm going to note that right here with this line. You can actually see it with some of the clouds that are by Waterloo. So here's the disturbance that's coming in. It's moving into eastern Iowa right now. So that'll be arriving slowly throughout the morning into the early afternoon. And as that thing moves east, it's going to interact with all the unstable air that's building up ahead of it, and it's going to bring us some scattered coverage of showers and storms. Now, you notice there's not much cloud cover here to the south and west of us, so cloud cover is not going to be an issue. We will get enough storm energy to start destabilizing things. Let's actually put the storm energy on there for now so you can see that, yes, we already have quite a bit of it sitting around. We're expecting these numbers to get close to 2,000, if not 3,000. And if you're curious what that means, I'll put our storm energy map up here so you can see the scale. So as we go into this afternoon, you can see how some of these numbers approach 3,000. In fact, there's 3020 in our southern hometowns. But we have at least 2,000, if not 2,500, what we call joules per kilogram storm energy in here as we go into early this afternoon. This is 1:30. So look at the scale there. That is easily in the high category. And if you're further south, that's where the extreme storm instability exists. So that doesn't quite reach our area today, but it's high enough that we are going to pop up some of these isolated to widely scattered showers and storms. And again, some severe weather will be possible with some of those. What about the rainfall potential? So I'm going to show you this here, and thank you, Brandy, for getting the banner there. What I'm showing you is what we call not only the temperature, the dew point, and the storm energy, but I want to show you the available water, because when we had storms move through on Friday, that available water number was well over 2 inches. You can see today we're under 2 inches, which is good. That means, yes, we're still going to have some heavy downpours, but they're not going to be the torrential heavy downpours like we had on Friday. So that also limits our flood threat today. So that's why this setup is nowhere near identical to Friday, and thank goodness for that, because we do not want a repeat of what happened on Friday. That is for sure. So again, we're going to keep an eye on our future track model. Probably about 10 minutes from now, maybe less than that, we'll be able to get the newer run, and we'll be able to see what that looks like. We had an earlier round of showers and storms that tried to move through. Those have all fallen apart. The radar is now completely quiet around here, but again, we're going to watch and see what happens to the west of us cooking up here in the next hour or two. I know we do have meteorologist Morgan Strackbine on standby in case we do need to get the beast in here. I know weather anchor Peter Warner is going to be joining me at the top of the noon hour in case we do need to do some severe storm coverage. Again, the app is where we will break in first, most likely before the storms even become severe. And then we will break in on air to programming this afternoon if those severe storms materialize and start threatening some of our hometowns. So we've got a good amount of folks here today ready to keep you safe and ahead of these storms. You can see the ones this morning. Yep, poof, just fizzled. And that was expected. Low-level jet runs out of fuel this time of the morning, so we didn't really expect much of that to make it in here. But yeah, it is soupy this morning. Temperatures already in the upper 70s. The dew points are in the 70s. We've got the energy in place. Now we're just waiting for that trigger, which was that disturbance I just showed you on satellite there a couple of minutes ago to come through. So that's the latest on the severe weather. Next, I'm going to go through a couple of the questions that we answered for you this week, and then I'll take some of your questions as we await that brand new run of Future Track to come in. And again, we'll expect that in about the next 10 minutes or less. Today's question was a cool one, and I really like this one too. It's one I've answered before, but it's a good reminder because we see it this time of year. This was from Alma. The strong storms last week produced some of the loudest, longest lasting thunder I've heard. Why is that? And this is from Galesburg. So what we saw with the storms last week, whether it was the ones early in the week or later in the week, is these storms were kind of working with what we call an inversion. If you're not familiar with what an inversion is, it's a thin layer of air that's just above the ground where the temperature actually rises as you go up in height rather than falling. So on an average day, as you go up higher into the atmosphere off the ground, as your height increases, the temperature usually decreases. Well, when you have an inversion, the temperature actually starts decreasing from the ground up, but then you hit this layer of warm air and the temperature goes back up. Then you get out of that layer of warm air and the temperature goes back down. Here you can see an example of that. Look at the temperatures as you go from 60 and then it gets warm up there just above the ground at 70 and then the temperature drops off. So what happens is that inversion kind of acts like a wall, and all of the sound waves from the thunder that's rolling underneath the storm, they get trapped and they just bounce back and forth all between those two different layers. Not only does it make the thunder sound louder and deeper, but it also allows the thunder to travel longer, farther distances. So you're able to hear it when the storm is much, much further away. A lot of folks described last Friday kind of as a freight train, and it wasn't just the wind, it was just the constant thunder. It sounded like a rolling freight train in the distance was coming toward them. So that is the rolling thunder that we saw last week, and that was a fantastic question. Loved that one. So in addition to that, we also talked about this, heat lightning. Is heat lightning actually a real thing, or is it just something that's mythical, something that's kind of made up? Well, when I was a child, I grew up thinking, yeah, there was heat lightning. You look in the distance on a very hot summer evening, you saw some flashing in the sky. My parents told me it was heat lightning, as did probably their parents before them. But it is in fact not related to heat at all. It is related to the way that light travels and sound travels, and what you're actually seeing are lightning flashes from a distant thunderstorm. So there you see light can travel infinitely times more distance-wise compared to sound. Light can travel up to 100 miles away from a storm. Sound, though, can only travel about 10 to 15 miles away. So you're seeing the lightning, but you're not hearing the thunder. So what you're seeing is a distant thunderstorm. Heat really doesn't cause lightning on its own. Just because it's hot outside doesn't mean it's going to create lightning. Boy, if that was the case, I think a lot of us would be in trouble. There'd be lightning all over the place because we have certainly had some really hot days around here. So no, heat lightning is not a thing. It takes more than heat. You need storm energy, you need something to lift it into a thunderstorm, and there is the answer to that question. So some really good questions this week, and again next week I'm going to tackle that question as to what happened in Texas, the weather surrounding it, and what is cloud seeding and what is cloud seeding capable of. So I'm looking forward to answering all of those questions for you next week. We're going to get to some of your questions here. In about 4 minutes, we're going to check back in with our future track model and see what it's showing in the near term here for the evolution of that severe storm threat as we go into the afternoon. Could get a little busy around here, but thankfully nothing like what we saw last Friday. We have Ellie from Galva in back this morning. She was wondering what actually causes lightning and what makes it so consistent like throughout last week. So this type of pattern, especially the one we had last week and this week, involved a lot of storm energy. When you have a lot of storm energy, like the kind that we have sitting around today and the kind we had sitting around last week, where this storm energy number is well past 2,000, and in some cases, it can get as high as 5,000, 6,000. That is a lot of energy these storms can absorb. And what that equates to is a lot of raindrops in the clouds and also a lot of hailstones in the upper level of the clouds. All of those raindrops colliding with each other, all of the hailstones colliding with each other, create an electric charge. And the more there are of those, the stronger the charge and the more lightning you're going to see. If you've ever watched our severe weather coverage, oftentimes we'll refer to the intensity of the lightning. Where are we seeing the clustering of the most lightning in the storm? And if we see more of that lightning clustering in a certain region, that's where we know where the hail core is, and most likely where we can also see some tornado development too. The amount of lightning also tells us the intensity of a storm. If the amount of lightning is decreasing, the storm is likely falling apart. If the amount of lightning is increasing, the storm is likely strengthening or re-strengthening. So lightning actually tells us a lot about what a thunderstorm is doing, and that's why it's nice to have that lightning network where we can actually pinpoint what the storms are doing. Great question there. We have Amber asking, I will be at work when this storm hits Galesburg. Looks like the worst part is over Knox County. Are we going to see high winds, hail, and possible twisties? That is a possibility. But again, I want to emphasize that these would be weaker tornadoes today versus what we were going to see on Friday. But wind for sure is going to be the big thing with these storms today. They're going to be very much loaded with water, and all the extra weight of that water as it comes down tends to grab onto a lot more air and brings it to the ground level. So that's why we're going to see some of those stronger wind gusts today. Tornado threat, I still think, is going to be higher to your northeast. I can't rule it out as far south as Galesburg, but as we showed you with the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center, it looks like the higher tornado threat is going to be to your northeast. And I'm going to pull that back up here for you, the tornado zones map, and it'll show kind of that darker red here. We go from orange to red, so the red here would be where we're seeing that higher tornado threat. And that makes sense because where you're going to get the spin-ups will always be on the north and eastern side of the area of low pressure. So I'm going to put that back on here for you so you can see the spin in the clouds. Again, that low pressure getting ready to move into Waterloo, and it's tracking in this direction. So it's always going to be this area or this side right in here that's going to see the tornado potential. And you can see that whole area is moving due east. So it's going to be north of the Quad Cities and east of the Quad Cities by the time it gets here, where we're going to see that tornado potential develop. So that's something that you can kind of take to the bank, if you will, anytime we get these little, what we call MCVs in here. These mesoscale convective vortices, they're caused by thunderstorms. Think of it as a mini low pressure. The tornado threat is always going to be on the east and northeast side, directly east of the low. So with the low trending to the north of us, that area that I just circled here, that's going to head east. So eventually that would mean that, yes, we would translate the tornado threat into that region that I just showed you here as we go into the afternoon. That's where we're going to see that. You know, it's kind of funny. It looks like a cartoon character with two eyes. Who knew I was so artistic here? It only took me drawing on the graphics to see it. So that's the explanation for that in terms of where that tornado threat is going to lay out here as we go into this afternoon. We have Ryan asking, what do you think about the ring of fire jet stream we're about to see later this week? Yes, that's the pattern we're going to get into this weekend and into next week. We're going to have another heat dome developing as we go into the next several days, and that's going to be to the southwest of us. The ring of fire, we call it that because we get clusters of thunderstorms on the edge of the most intense heat. In fact, I think I have a little explainer that I might be able to pull up here that kind of explains what the ring of fire pattern is. So let me pull that up really quickly and you can see what this is. So the ring of fire pattern, you have all this heat to the south of us, and you get multiple storm complexes that ride the edge of that heat. And this is going to be the pattern this weekend going into the early part, if not middle part of next week. So our zone here, even in the Quad Cities, we're going to be vulnerable to these. These thunderstorms are typically big wind producers and also heavy rain producers. They usually come in either first thing in the morning or very late at night. The timing of these things is tricky, but we usually get one about every 36 to 48 hours in this kind of pattern. So starting Saturday and then all the way through Sunday, Monday, and likely Tuesday, we're going to be in this pattern where these clusters of storms, some of which could be severe at times, will be moving through the entire region here. It's hard to pinpoint in advance which ones are going to be severe because we're working with so many small scale features that the models don't resolve well. So we'll likely find out the severity of these once we get a little bit closer to the actual event itself. But yeah, it looks like this weekend into next week, we're going to be on the edge of that heat dome, and then we will fully get in the heat as we get into Monday and Tuesday of next week. And we're likely going to need a weather impact alert for both Wednesday and Tuesday, because look at this. As we go into that 8-day tracker, again, ignore that box for tomorrow. I think what I did is I just clicked on the PM 8-day instead of the AM. Let me go to the AM one here that shows it a little bit better, because we're not ready to show the PM yet. That's for the afternoon shift. Here's the 8-day from this morning. Look at Wednesday, 94 degrees. No storms then, but we're going to have humidity, and that means the feels-like temperature by next Wednesday will be surpassing 100 degrees, and it looks like it's going to stay that way for a while. I showed on the 14-day, next Wednesday and Thursday, I think, are the 2 days we're going to need a heat advisory, maybe even Tuesday as well, depending on if we get any more showers and thunderstorms. But there will be another round of significant heat and humidity as we go into next week. At least this one is short-lived. It's only for a few days. It's not going to be for the whole week the way it looks. Matt is wondering about hail chances today. I'm not too excited about hail today at all, just because our atmosphere is very warm. If one storm can really take advantage of the air mass, perhaps some quarter-sized hail, but I really just don't see hail being the biggest threat today. The majority of it tends to melt before it reaches the ground here. You're welcome, Amber. I'm glad I could share some weather knowledge with you. I always love it when I can share everything that I know with you guys so that you learn a little something too along the way. Let's go back. Or actually, we have another question here. Tyler was wondering, following all the rain last week in a 2-day time period, what is the difference in a flash flood warning and a flash flood emergency? So a flash flood warning means that flash flooding is occurring, and that is typically true in some streets and some low-lying areas. A flash flood emergency means that life-threatening flash flooding is ongoing. This is the kind that we saw on Friday, where we had to start evacuating apartments and homes that were starting to see the water rise. That means it is a life-threatening situation. Travel should not be happening. You should be staying off of streets and roads at that time. And it just means that it's really escalated into a life-threatening situation. Let's see. Matthew's asking about the wind potential. Yes, Kiwani is definitely in the wind potential today. Absolutely. Tim was also wondering too, and from Moline, I was wondering if by chance all this severe weather we've seen in the past could be due to climate change, since we've had our share of severe weather in the Quad Cities, and could this affect the way our weather will come in the fall and the winter? When it comes to severe weather and climate change, we can't pinpoint one general event. For example, we cannot tie what happened to Texas to climate change. We cannot tie what happened here into the Quad Cities to climate change. We can't tie one specific event to that, but if we keep seeing more and more of these things repeatedly over and over again, then there becomes a climate change signal with that. Really, the only things we can easily attribute to climate change are temperature extremes, like long-term heat waves, big cold snaps, things like that. Those things are really, really easy for us to attribute to climate change. But anything like this makes it really, really difficult to make the case that it's climate related. So I want to show you this here, because this is our confidence in terms of understanding the effect of climate change. So our understanding is at the bottom, our confidence is on the left. Notice extreme heat, droughts, and extreme rainfall. Those are fairly high in confidence and high in understanding that those are attributed to climate change. But severe convective storms like the ones that we had in Texas and the ones that we had here with the extreme rainfall, and even tropical storms and hurricanes and extreme snow and ice, those are pretty low confidence that they're attentive to climate change. So something to keep in mind. Also, we have to remember the social aspect of things. We haven't always had cell phones. We haven't always had constant, instant communication. The fact that we have cell phones now, everybody can shoot their own video. Everybody can shoot photos. We're getting news and severe weather information as it's happening. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, we didn't hear about it until days afterward, and then by then it was an afterthought. So you also have to remember the social aspect of this too. We're now in a new digital age where we're getting information fast and we're getting information constant. So it may seem like things are becoming more severe, things are becoming more intense, but you also can't forget about the social aspect too. When else in our lifetime, other than recently, have we been constantly bombarded with information when it comes to breaking news and severe weather? Because now everything is instant. There's no delay. There's no, waiting for it a couple of days to hear about what happened. Now we hear about it here and now in the present. So that kind of makes the urgency ramp up a little bit more. So keep that in mind too. I always love studying the social impact of that too, because I think that's something a lot of folks tend to forget, is we're getting information at rapid fire pace now. And that's why things can at times seem so overwhelming. I get it. There are days, especially during severe weather days, I have to take my watch off because I'm getting so much information it becomes overwhelming. So keep that in mind. Good morning, Riley. Good to see you here. I have not seen your picture yet. You sent me a picture, but I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'll see if I can get to that today. I do see it sitting in my inbox. Let's see. We have Billy from Clinton also in here this morning, wondering about the possibility of rain-loaded downdrafts today. Thank you for your time and hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great day too, Billy. Yes, that's going to be the possibility with the wind threat today. Those rain-loaded downdrafts, that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's see. Riley has a joke for us this morning. If an orchestra plays in a thunderstorm, who is most likely to hit by lightning? The conductor. That is funny. That's awesome. Really, really cool. That always brightens my day. Before we get out of here, because I see we have 90 seconds left, Future Track. I promised you we were going to go back and look at that again because we want to see the new model run. So let's see what we got here. Drum roll. Again, both of us, all of us are looking at this for the first time here. So yeah, starting to develop some of those storms there around noon. Looks like we're still kind of trying to get some stuff going along Galesburg there to the south. Let me actually take this off for a second. Let me dive in here. Again, we can do this on the fly during Ask Andrew Live, which I love. So let's put our 4K. That was our 3K, our rapid update. Let's go to the 4K. And yeah, it kind of shows the same thing. Scattered activity. Again, just because it shows all of this south into Burlington, Galesburg, and Knoxville doesn't mean it's going to be down there. What it does, though, is it gives us a general idea of what the storms are going to look like. And that is a broken line coming in here right between, I would say, noon and 2 o'clock. And again, if you're Illinois side, it looks like you have the best chance of seeing these storms as we go into the afternoon. I want to thank all of you for joining me this morning, not only for Ask Andrew Live, but for our severe storm discussion. A reminder, we do Ask Andrew Live every Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock on the 8+ app. We're going to continue to monitor the severe weather situation as we go into the late morning and early afternoon. Should we need to break in, we'll do that first on the Plus app, and then we'll go on air as well, should that warrant. But all of us will be here today. Morgan Strackbein, myself, and Peter Warner. All of us will be keeping an eye on these storms to keep you safe. We'll see you back for GMQC at 11. Have a great Wednesday, Quad Cities.
Continue with us and watch free now on the 8 Plus app everywhere you stream.